Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to USA Prepares. This is Cathy. I'm filling in for Vincent. I want to thank Vince for all his hard work and his great shows. Jason, thank you for engineering the program today. And I will have Sharon joining me today.
Good morning.
Like to talk. Good morning, Sharon. How are you?
Doing good. Continue.
Sharon, we are going to cover what to do when you have a crisis, especially when it comes to food, how to save food at the grocery store, how to stretch your dollar, where we buy things, and how. Things like, what do you do if you have a job loss, an illness, medical expenses, even if it's things like a wedding coming up or a death or a birth. Those are all things that cost money. So we're trying to get to where we can explain, both of us, what we have done throughout the years. I want to say that I had 4 children, 3 teenage boys and a daughter. And so I've also had to do a lot of it of cooking. There was many times where I would have to buy 4 or 5 gallons of milk in 1 week. And by the end of the week, I'd have maybe $5 left, or I'd have to make that stretch for a few more days. So I think Sharon's kind of been in the same situation. So what we're trying to do is just help everyone stock a pantry and put things away for the rainy day. So Sharon, why don't you help us out and tell us what you have done and some of your ideas?
Sure. We were passing all kinds of ideas before we were talking. I actually aim for what I would call the prepared pantry. So I have a lot of basics on sale, and there's a lot of ways to go about doing that. But one of the things I tend to do a lot is look for sales of items that I normally get. Like a few years back, they had mayonnaise, a name brand, on for 99 cents a quart. So I didn't buy 2, I bought about 10. And that had set me up for probably 2-3 years. And so I tend to stock up that way, but I am concerned, and as you are too, we've been talking about that there are a lot of people, economists and stuff, who are saying that our grocery bill could be at least 50% by the end of this year. So I think it'd be really good to have some stuff on hand. I carry, my basics are usually, you want your flour and sugar and basic stuff like that too, but the other things I do are pasta, rice, beans, potatoes, barley. Do you cook with lentils very much? Because I just made a dish for the first time the other day, and it was actually really delicious. Do you use that?
Oh, yes, I do. I make a lentil chili, or you can even add it to a regular chili. Lentils cook up pretty easily if you're just going to cook them with water. I believe they're done in about 15 minutes. They cook fast like your split peas do. But, yes, I do make a lot of lentil dishes. And it kind of absorbs the flavors. If you're going for the chili flavor. So, and I wanted to comment, too, you were talking about sales. I was at the grocery store, and I found cranberries, and they were quarter a bag. It was after Thanksgiving. And so I bought 10 bags. So when I got up to the cash register, they were 2 for a quarter. They had marked them down even more. So cranberries are something you can freeze. And so what I did was I took some, I froze them. I like cranberry salad, so I make that too. But I also laid them on my dehydrator, and I dehydrated them. So what I have found is right now the produce is really not that great, and it's expensive. So if you're going to make a salad, you can take dried cranberries, or you can take olives or raisins, or make your own croutons. You can it's nice to have the fresh produce, but if it's expensive, it doesn't look that good, or you're not at the store, then kind of go into your pantry. But so that's a couple examples. And then, this was quite a few months ago now, but I was at one grocery store and they had pasta for $1/4 box, and there was 12 boxes. I bought all of it. That's so cheap. And I ended up giving a couple boxes to each of my children, just because they can use it and they can cook with it too. So I think you're right on when you're saying try to stock up before the prices go up even farther.
Yeah, I agree. And, a lot of people are like, it costs so much to get on, like maybe to have a backlog of, stuff. I like to have a prepared pantry, like I said, but, you can make a list. Well, I need flour, I need sugar, I need all these things. And that's not a bad idea to have a list, and generally what you should have in your pantry. But I don't think you need to be stuck to just that list. If you need to get some type of pasta, it might be elbow macaroni, it might be biryani, it might be spaghetti, but, pick up what's on sale, and kind of be a little more flexible about that. But I do think people need to consider having a well-stocked pantry. I know a lot of people that just eat out a whole lot. And when this COVID thing hit, it really did a number on the grocery stores, because whereas they were eating at school or at work or popping into fast food restaurants, all of a sudden they had to cook the food at home because they couldn't go anywhere. And it could happen again. Who would have ever thought that they could shut almost a whole country down like that? It seems totally bizarre, but it could happen again. It set a lot of people back really bad, even with the so-called toilet paper thing. Well, most people ran the store 2, 3, 4 times a week, and a lot of people run by the store after work and will grab something quick to throw together. And they didn't have much toilet paper on hand, but all of a sudden the whole family was going to be home. Well, of course they had to get more toilet paper because they're not using it at work, they're not using it at school. And so I feel like it's just wise to have plenty of food ahead, and then you can make a lot of different meals with it. But I feel like it would be a very good time. I mean, you and I do it all the time, but for people start learning how to cook from scratch and how to stretch the food in case you have to add more people into your family that are eating. And I know you have a whole lot of ideas on that too, because it's kind of our lifestyle.
Yeah, I've actually been doing it probably most of my life. My parents and grandparents both grew up in the Depression. Yours probably did too. So I always heard the stories. But here's an example. You were talking about paper products. If worse comes to worse, really the only paper product that you really have to have is the toilet paper. You can use, if you had to have Kleenex, you could use like a piece of flannel and cut it up, or an old soft T-shirt. And you could use that and wash them if you couldn't get to the store. What if they close down again and we have the same issue? You can use rags for paper towels, and just throw them away if they're greasy, or wash them. Just save. A lot of times you just clothes that just are beyond repair. They're just stained and you can't use them. So I think as long as you can think ahead, my impetus for doing what I do is I have 4 grown children, and I have 3 grandchildren and another grandchild on the way in a couple months. So my thought is, if something happens, I want to be able to help my children too. So that is always in the back of my mind, is I want to help, especially my children and grandchildren and a few close family members. And I think if you could share ideas, that is really great. And I think with Sharon and I, we are like-minded. And I have a real hard time finding people like myself. I had a friend, I was trying to talk to her about stocking her pantry, and she made a comment. She goes, well, I did it during the COVID thing, and I filled up my freezer, but I'm not going to do it again. It was too much work. So that was the attitude she had. So if you can't change their mind, that's one thing, but I hope we can help people to just look at your menu. Like Sharon said, make a list, which is what I have, a master list. And I pretty much know all my prices, and I know what I use. And I think things like just basic meals. buy spaghetti. If you don't have your own spaghetti sauce, buy a couple jars or cans of spaghetti sauce. Maybe buy some beans. You can always add beans to a lot of things. It's a filler. And have at least 6 or 8 meals in your extended pantry or your prepper pantry, like Sharon said. Have those meals so that if you're sick, you don't have money, a dental bill, or the dog's got to go to the vet, have that ready to go. So it's an easy meal. Even if you can put it in your freezer, make up double or triple batches, put them in your freezer. We all have those days where we just can't get to what we were supposed to do. And if you don't have anything thawed, then how are you going to make a meal? But if you have soup in there or you have chili, all you have to do is defrost it and use it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I like to follow I've always been fascinated with the pioneer era and then how people made it through the Depression. And my grandparents totally went through the Depression, so did my parents. And, of course, my parents were children. But hearing what people do during the Depression and how they made it stretch is really, fascinating to me, kind of just of interest. But, they did tend to use a lot of soups or maybe chowders or casseroles or dishes that stretch. So, like, you could take some type of casserole. There's all kinds of old-time recipes. And then you add a smaller amount of meat, and then you add what you have on hand, and you can make that stretch. What we have is a lot of people, unfortunately, don't hardly know how to cook. And they're just used to picking up this or that and heating it up in the oven. And I'm not saying that you can't do that once in a while, okay? I'm not beyond buying, those great old frozen pizzas and throw it in once in a while when I'm in a hurry, okay? But by and large, we cook everything. I cook everything from scratch pretty much. And it tastes better. It really does taste better than bought stuff. And when you're used to eating home-cooked, mostly from scratch food, the store-bought food has this, chemical taste to it. And I suppose people who live on it all the time don't really notice it, but because I don't eat that way, I do notice it. But we cook a lot from scratch for 2 reasons. One, a big one throughout the years, because we raised 5 children, to save money, and secondly, to have a better quality food. And I think you are kind of like that too. And I just feel like that with what is potentially coming ahead, and who really knows, but we've just seen the most unusual year, that people would be extremely wise to have plenty of food on hand, but it doesn't have to cost a fortune. People tend to think, I've got to have thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars, and you really don't have to have that. It does take some money, but if you start looking for sales, and honestly, if you have a Dollar Tree, there's some good stuff in there. And then in Walmart, I don't like to shop Walmart a lot, but once in a while I go in there because they have a couple items that are so much less expensive than everywhere else, and we are on a snug budget. I go there. But Walmart has pretty good deals, and I've heard if you have an Aldi store that they have phenomenal deals. We don't have one here. But if you kind of have a general idea of what you eat and then what you need to put in it, then that's the stuff you want to stock up on. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and have a list. I think a lot of people eat the same things. Like maybe in the 3-week period, you pretty much have the same thing. So if you could make a menu for 3 weeks, and have a list of what you use, you could keep those on hand and at least watch for those items on sale. So anyway, we're going into a break, and I will be back in a few minutes with Sharon. Thank you. Welcome back to USA Prepares. This is Cathy. I'm with Sharon. We're talking about stocking a pantry, how to save money in the kitchen. I have a couple things, and then I want to ask Sharon some more ideas that she has of what she stocks her pantry with. One of the things I do is I make 2 lists. I make one list of things that I need right away, and then I make a list of things, I don't know, I don't even know what I call it. It's kind of like a sale list where it's kind of expensive, but if it goes on sale, then I watch for that. And a lot of sales are cyclical. If you watch the flyers, stuff will go on sale maybe once a month, sometimes every 4, 5, 6 weeks. So I kind of watch for the sale, and then I'll stock up, and it saves a lot of money. The other thing I do is I have a insulated tote bag. It's a small tote bag that you can pack a lunch in. So I I keep it in my car if I'm out going to my daughter's or going to the grocery store or getting gas, or I know I'm going to be out for a while, and I'll put in crackers, I'll put in an apple, I'll put in granola bars, and I keep it in my car when I am shopping, because a lot of times it's lunchtime and you just need something to tide you over till you can get home and have lunch. So it's nice to just have something in your car, even if it's in an emergency. If you get into somewhere in the winter or you get off the road or something, you have some kind of food. So those are two things that I use. The other thing that I do, and I never mentioned, but I keep a glass jar and I write on the top of it, it's for grease. Things when you're skimming the grease off and you just don't know what to do with it. So you can either use a real sturdy plastic jar, or I keep a glass jar and I drain my grease in there and I keep it in the refrigerator. And then when it's full, I throw it away. That way, none of the grease goes down my sink, and I don't have to find a container to try to throw it away in. So that's just something that I do in the kitchen. It's something I've done for years. So I just wanted to pass that on, because it was always frustrating to me to have like a few tablespoons of grease and it's hot. I don't know what to do with it. So anyway, Sharon, can you tell me some more things that you use in your pantry or what you would stock up on?
Well, yeah, at first, like even with you on sales, I probably only buy, 80% of what I buy is on sale. Okay, but I have what I would call a well-stocked or prepared pantry. And like you were saying, we tend to make, maybe they say same 10, 20, 10, I don't know. We make a lot of similar meals. We rotate it out, and then I'll try extra things like we were able to get half a hog with a tray with my daughter, so now we can get pork chops a little more often. I don't eat them a whole lot. Otherwise, I might just buy a package randomly, especially if it's on sale, or items like that where you kind of vary your diet. But I tend to know after all these years what we are likely to eat and use, so I just look for sales all the time. And then one of my favorite grocery stores has a markdown bins, and a lot of things they have best sell by date, but they're not going to go bad. Like the mayonnaise. Honestly, mayonnaise will last forever as long as you keep it in a cooler, dark place and it stays sealed. It really will. So I could stock way up on that, and I actually just stocked up really well on some shortening for only $1.99 a can. Now, I'm aware that shortening is not very healthy for you. I know that, but I still like to use it in certain recipes. So I just snag it now, and then what happens is you save a ton of money. For instance, I do not know what the current prices are in the last couple of months, but about a year ago I was price checking, and they had tomato sauce on $4 on a case lot sale. And I looked at the shelf, and it was 59 cents. So basically, by buying it in the case lot sale, I was getting at least 2 for the same price of a regular price. And sometimes it's even cheaper than that. So I do that a lot. I just know that I use a lot of basics like, I actually can my own tomatoes, but in the past I used to buy diced and, stewed tomatoes. And I do a lot of tomato sauce because I do make my own spaghetti sauce. I have bought those occasionally, a jar or 2 on hand just in case. We also kind of have the idea if our kids get hard up, we want to make sure our kids and grandkids have enough food to eat. So we kind of consider the fact that we may need to assist them if things get really rough. And so, oops, got another phone. I'll wait and keep talking after the music.
Yeah, when we get back, maybe we can talk about some of the easy recipes that we can put together. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to USA Prepares. This is Cathy. I'm here with Sharon. And I wanted to say that Sharon and I wanted this to be like two friends talking to each other and made it real casual and informal. I hope it comes across that way because she is truly a wealth of information, and I appreciate all of her talents and her knowledge. My husband he teases me about using my 50,000 words a day because I do like to talk. So I hope that it just comes across as real easygoing and that we're helping people with our experiences. A couple things that I feel like we should add to our pantry. One thing is lemon juice, because you use it in so many things, and you can buy the bottled lemon juice and it keeps for quite a while. But even in canning, you need it for certain recipes. but you can make salad dressings out of it. You can use it in tea. So buy a few bottles, and I do get mine at Aldi's. I do have Aldi's near here, Sharon, so I do get it there. Vinegar, gallons of vinegar, whether it's the white vinegar, you can buy that, and the apple cider vinegar is handy for recipes and cleaning. And oils, like buy certain kinds of oils, your extra virgin olive oil, anything that you like to use those for. Those don't keep quite as long, but if you look at the shelf life on them, those tubes that they go on sale, they can be kind of pricey. And yeast. I mean, I was thinking of baking. Like, I buy the big bags of yeast at Sam's or Costco, and it's $4, I believe, or $5 for 2 pounds, which is really cheap. Once I open it, it's vacuum sealed. I put it in a Tupperware container, and I put it in the freezer, and I keep a small one in my refrigerator, just enough so that maybe it's got 10 teaspoons in it so that I can take that out and while I'm baking. So you can freeze the yeast, and then you're not sure if it's good. You can always proof it to see if it activates with some warm water. And lots of flour. I buy whole wheat. I try to buy organic when I can, but I buy rye, and I do have white for the other situations. But if you can't make bread, then you can make muffins. Muffins are easy. You can add blueberries to them. You can make oatmeal raisin or bran muffins. I mean, there's a lot of different recipes for muffins. But if you look at your baking items, have that, and your spices. The whole peppers last longer than ground pepper, and you can just buy a little grinder and grind them yourself. So, is there anything else you can add that you can think of, Sharon?
You know, I really am big on seasonings. When you got to talking the last thing, all that stuff is really true. Quick bread, you can also do muffins, even not muffins, but I mean biscuits. I use, like, you can make a pot pie mixture and put it in a 9x13 pan or whatever size, and then put biscuits on top, or just add that too. And cornbread, you know, we use cornbread for sides. I look at those as kind of stretcher to your meal, so that, you know, they're really tasty, but you can also stretch out your meal to where you don't have maybe as much plain meat, but you have your vegetables, and you have the rolls or biscuits or stuff like that. And then, of course, for that, you would need your baking powder and baking soda. And then I'm pretty big on seasonings. I have a lot, but I tend to lean towards, like, garlic powder, onion powder, Italian seasoning, basil, oregano, kind of those. I don't know what else you use. I have a lot, whatever kind of leans towards Italian or Mexican, even though my husband and I, neither are Mexican or Italian. We just kind of like that kind of food seasoned. And so I collect a lot of spices. Spices really don't go bad unless you left them out in the hot sun, like in a window or something. They just might be less potent, so you can always just double it up if it's older spices. I've had spices that are 5, 6, 7 years old, and I do have the advantage of keeping them pretty much in a darker area, but it doesn't, you know, they'll just last, most of them. You just have to, if they're not strong enough, just add a little more. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't throw out spices hardly ever. I just double it up or something. I use that a lot. You know, I did share an idea that I haven't personally tried, but it sounded pretty reasonable. They said if you bought cans of soup, like the better Campbell's, you know, chunky whatever soups or something, and you want to stretch it, you just add more liquid and then put a little instant potato flakes in there. And that way would stretch it, and it would feed more people. So I haven't personally tried that. I do use the instant potatoes to thicken my soups because I'm not real fond of super brothy soups. I like them to have some sort of substance to them. So I've added that. I know, you know, we were talking about meals. I think having a crock pot is a really nice investment. And as long as you have electricity, it saves you a lot of time. When my kids were home, I actually homeschooled them, and then we have 5, so we staggered them out over a few years. And so I would be running kids to sports activity or piano lessons or art lessons or whatever. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And I would come home, and my husband would be expected home like in about 45 minutes or less. And so I have a lot of really what I call my fast food. I can hamburger, but you can actually fry it and just stick it in the freezer, you know, in baggies. And I would take that and some tortilla chips, and I'd throw some salsa in, and I'd make soft tacos, basically. And so while I'm chopping up some onion, fresh onion, and olives, I could grab everything together and we could eat in less than 20 minutes, And then I used my crock pot for putting a lot of different meats and stuff together, different, you can just cook them, just a lot of stuff easier. Oh, also another idea, you probably already do this, but if you want to cook regular potatoes or mashed potatoes, you can dice them up and they'll cook a lot faster than if you put those great big old chunks in there. And so that's something to save a little time. But I did a lot of things to try to save time, and I actually had a list of quick meals that I could put together because, I don't know, sometimes when you're running kids every which way and you're just having one of those days where the kids are not cooperating with you, it's hard to think of what you're going to make for supper. And so I just had a list, and for me, I had it at the end of my counter. It wasn't visible on the cupboard, and I could just glance and think, oh, yeah, that's what I'll make, And a lot of it was quick stuff. I could throw spaghetti together quite quick and put a vegetable on, and, it's nice if you have garlic bread, but you can actually just take regular bread and put some garlic butter on it and toasted it. It's great.
Talking about stretching with bread, I make a lot of bread in my bread machine. And, it is good if you have crusty bread, well, then you can chop those up I put them in a big bowl and I chop them in cubes. Once it starts to get hard, because it doesn't last, and then I just drizzle olive oil over it. I'll put a little Italian seasoning, some garlic powder, or onion salt, and I stir it all up. It's not coated heavy, they're not soggy. It's just enough for flavor and just so the seasoning sticks. And then I make my own croutons. So there's so many things you can do with leftover bread that you just don't want to throw it away. You can make breadcrumbs. So I do, even my cornflake crumbs. I use that as a topping sometimes when I'm making a casserole or scalloped potatoes and ham. I'll take a big box of cornflakes from Aldi's, and I'll just put it in my food processor and pulse it. I put in a couple cups at a time and I pulse it, and then I just keep it in a Tupperware container. So it's right there. But, you talked about having easy meals. You can make goulash. As long as you have some ground chuck in the freezer and you've got canned tomatoes, if you have onions, macaroni, if you want to add beans, or some people add corn or peppers or onions. I freeze all my peppers that I grow through the year, and I either save my onions or dehydrate them. And if you have your basic items, I almost always have onions, celery, potatoes, carrots, and in the pantry. But I freeze peppers because they're so expensive right now. So I freeze my own, and I just use those for all my dishes that I would normally have to buy a pepper for. So it takes time during the summer. I'm sure you're like me. Once everything starts coming in, I'm in the kitchen so much. I'm chopping and I'm dehydrating. And you were talking about using the crock pot. What I do, because I like pinto beans and all that, I just add them to a lot of different things. I soak them overnight right in the crock pot. I'll dump a 1 pound bag in, I fill it up and soak them overnight, filled up with water almost to the top. Then I drain the water in the morning. And then I put warm water in there and I turn it on, put the beans back in. I'll add a couple teaspoons of salt. I'll chop up an onion, maybe some garlic, and I just let them cook. And then I just watch them. It might take 4 or 5 hours, but I just watch them till they're fork tender. And then some people use the juice off of it. You could use it, but I don't always use it, but I drain them. And then if I don't use all the beans right away, then I'll freeze them in containers. So it's so much cheaper to make 1 pound bag of any kind of bean, whether it's black beans or kidney beans or pinto beans, and then just freeze them. But they're so nutritious. Sometimes for lunch, I'll just heat up maybe pinto beans, add a little water, maybe add some salsa or some cumin, salt and pepper, and I just have it as a side dish because I'm just one of those people. I guess I'm odd, but I just like those. So it's just a cheap thing to have on hand, but you can buy variety. You can buy chickpeas or split peas or lentils, or they have yellow lentils, red lentils, they have barley. So there's a lot of those things can be in your extended pantry for when you don't have the money or you can't get to the store. And a lot of times, too, I probably mentioned this before, but when you have your grains, I put a bay leaf in there. I'll either like tape it to the top so it doesn't get all crumbled in there, or I'll put it in like a little envelope or something, and that keeps some of the bugs out. So that's good for flour, too, and any of your grains. But if you just go down the aisle and look at basic things that you could cook yourself, you're going to save a lot of money.
Yeah, you'll save so much money. And then once you get used to cooking from that, then you start looking for yourself or the bulk buys, and then you'll save even more. Also, you're aware of this. I know you are. But a lot of your tougher meats turn very tender if you cook them slow on the crock pot. And so you can buy the less expensive meats, and they'll work really well. And you can combine them with things in your crock pot. We used to make a chicken and rice with some other stuff. That wasn't a tough meat, but I also just throw a variety of things like the goulash. It's so funny. I've always heard of goulash, and I found this recipe I made the other day, and it's absolutely delicious. And to me, the name goulash isn't a very appealing sound because I didn't grow up hearing it a lot, but it was a great food stretcher. So if you happen to have a variety of vegetables or whatever, you can combine. And then I think the difference on goulash, though, is having some seasonings in it, to me, that would make it from just plain. Like, before we got married, I spent some time working at an orphanage down in Mexico, and they ate whatever was given to them, donated, and so we would have like plain beans with maybe some little meat in it, but for lunch and dinner, and then we'd have some type of vegetable kind of soup almost with whatever vegetables and meat they were given for lunch and dinner. And the kids down there weren't used to a variety, and they loved it, and they chowed down on it, and they could get seconds or thirds or whatever, so they never went hungry. But for me, just plain beans and rice was pretty, beans were just like alone, and then vegetables, it just didn't have any seasonings. And so if you stock up on seasonings, it can really improve the taste and the edibility of your food. And we got the music again.
Yeah, we'll be back right back. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Cathy. I'm with Sharon, and we were talking about seasonings. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I put mine in the freezer if I have room, if I can. I buy the big containers of and those are just what I don't grow. I do grow a lot of my own herbs, rosemary, oregano, basil. There's a lot that I do myself, thyme. So what I don't grow, I try to get the big containers at Costco or Sam's or Gordon's or some of the grocery stores sell them. The one thing I did learn was that Aldi's sells them, and I believe they're the extras from McCormick spices. That's what I've read. So that's a good price, too. If you don't use something all that much and you don't want to buy the big thing, then that's a good place to get it. What I do is I take them and put them in my food saver containers, and I will vacuum seal out the air. But what I use is the jar myself. I save canning jars, and you can use a wide mouth lid or the standard lid. And the food saver has a cord on it that you put in the jar, and it's got a lid, and you can vacuum seal out the air. And those will last indefinitely. I'm not going to go into the whole process right now. There's different areas that you can look it up. But if you can use a used lid, as long as it's not bent. But then I also have what is called a vacuum pump or a brake bleeder, and you do that by hand, which I like better because I feel like I get more suction. So I don't throw any of my spices out. I have them on my canning shelf, and I have them all labeled, whether it's the marjoram or basil or anything I grow. And they're so much nicer, so much fresher than store-bought. But if you can't grow your own, then that is the way you can save them. Even if you have to put them in like Ziploc bags or freezer bags or containers, you can throw those in the freezer. So the one thing I wanted to mention, too, was sea salt. Sea salt lasts forever, where regular salt, it does tend to lose its flavor after about 3 or 4 years. So if you have access to buying sea salt in bulk, that's something where I keep that in my prepper pantry also. So some of the other spices I would say is like cinnamon and chili powder and cumin, celery salt. I have a ton of spices because I like variety too, but the ones that Sharon mentioned were good. So I think she made a good point of saying that with a little variety, you can really change your dishes and just trying to extend your meals and make them a little bit better.
Yeah, I have to laugh when I vacuum pack my seasonings too. But I also have, Tupperware used to make these little rectangular containers that you could put your spices in, and I snagged them at garage sales, and so I put a smaller amount. They were half cup and cup size, okay, and I picked them up because they stack real nice on my pantry shelf that I have, and I filled them up with things I use a lot, like garlic powder. I use the 1 cup size, and things I don't use as much of. I use the smaller ones, and that way I can see what I have right away. I label them on the outside. But I vacuum pack like all spices, because most of the spices I buy by the pound, and I buy through Azure Standard usually, and I vacuum pack, or I make them myself. Like you said, I dehydrate a lot. I highly recommend people get a dehydrator. Even the brown ones, the little less expensive ones, you can probably find them even at thrift stores. It's amazing what you can find at thrift stores. And you can find them at garage sales. But if you don't have time, you can buy even the more inexpensive ones. And like, I actually dehydrate my peppers a lot. I have freeze some too, and then I dehydrate. I had an abundance of carrots, and so I canned some, but, jars take quite a bit of space. So I started blanching them and dehydrating them, and they're really handy to throw into different soups or chowders, or I make a black bean soup that you use. Usually I can all kinds of stuff. So I have canned sausage, but you could just fry it up and add it to the canned black beans that I already have, and I throw some carrots in there, some other seasonings, and it's another one you can throw in your crock pot and have it simmering all day if you want, or you can just heat it up on the stove and let it simmer a while. But there's something really nice about when supper comes around and you smell all those good smells of food cooking. It's just a really comforting and kind of a security feeling. There's something about innate in our inside of us that we're comforted when we smell good food. It's like when you go by a pizza place, food, But when it's in your home and you have some good seasonings going, it's just a really nice feeling. Plus, then when you eat it yourself and you've made it, and assuming your recipe turned out well, I mean, we've all had flops once in a while, but it's just wonderful to sit down to a hearty meal that smells good. It doesn't have to be expensive, but I think we miss that in our society a lot with all the fast food driving through and just grabbing something to eat on the way home, personally. And I hear music, don't I, again?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's you back up in the hour.
Oh, okay. Welcome back, everybody. This is Cathy. I'm filling in for Vincent. I have my friend Sharon with me, and we are trying to help you save money in the kitchen and stock a pantry. I have a few comments. Sharon, you made a comment about the good feeling about cooking your own food. And it's also, to me, it's nice to have your stocked pantry. It's a sense of security that you know that you've got food there and you can help your family and friends if need be. It's just nice to know, especially if you don't feel well and you can't get to the store, there's a snowstorm or something. It's just nice to have that security there for me. I like having my canned goods and my dried herbs and using my own things. I think the food tastes better.
I totally agree.
Go ahead, Sharon.
No, I just said I totally agree with you, the stock pantry. It's a good feeling to know that you can feed your family and yourself.
Yeah. One of the things that I do, I suppose it's a little old-fashioned, but every pay period, I have a little divider money envelope system. It's got little dividers in it, and I have little tabs on it. And I always have one, I put my grocery money in there, and every pay period, I have another slot that I take a little bit of money out, let's say $20, $30, and I put it in the next slot. And I kind of call that my emergency fund. Just in the event something comes up, even with the when this whole coronavirus thing happened, I had a few extra dollars just in cash sitting there that was just in case something came up out of the blue, or I found a great sale that, oh my gosh, I can save, 50, 60, 70%, then I'll take out of that envelope. So I do that. And I also do it with other things too. I do it with gas money and other bills that come up that I take care of myself. So to me, what it does is that when I have cash in my hand, I feel like when it's gone, and you don't overspend. And I've often read, I don't use a lot of credit for groceries and things, but I think a lot of people, if they just swipe their credit card, I think they spend a lot more money. But when I have a visual and I know, let's say I have $200 for that week, then I'm very careful on how I spend it, and I don't have a credit card bill at the end of the week because I didn't go over. So that's one thing I have done, and it kind of kept me with all my money going out, whether it's if I have to buy a birthday gift or a wedding gift, I have a little bit an envelope, and I have slept for all that. And I put it a little bit in there each paycheck. The other thing that I think if you know your prices on especially your top 30 or 40 items, if you know what a good price is, you probably are like me, Sharon, where I just know by looking. I've shopped long enough. I know what the prices are. I've memorized them. But if you don't know that $1 is a good price, let's say for pasta, and you go to a store and it's $2.19, now you're paying double of what you could have paid. So if you can just even take a sheet and write down the price of maybe where you got it at the best price and what the price is, you can just look at the sheet. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. So those are a couple things that I have done, and I think having a list, which we said before, is a good idea of everything. I wanted to talk about dehydrating. The other thing that I dehydrate too, Sharon, is I do my herbs, and I'll slice up zucchini in my food processor, and I lay that on there. And then if you want to make like minestrone soup, you just throw those in there. And I do sun-dried tomatoes. I have so many cherry tomatoes from last year. I probably have 21 cup sun-dried tomatoes downstairs. I just dried and dried and dried, but I haven't had to buy tomatoes all season long because I can add them to pasta. I can add them to my salad. And I do onions. I do celery. And I also take liver for my dogs, or my dog, and then I have some family member dogs. And I lay it on parchment paper, and I just dry it real good with a rag or paper towel. And then I put it in there till it gets to where it's crispy, where you can just break it. And I use that for treats, and they love it. It's nutritious. All the dogs love it. That's what the dogs got for Christmas. So, those are just things, if you get a dehydrator, like Sharon was saying, I think that's a great idea. So, do you have anything else, Sharon, to add to some of the things you do?
Well, my husband's sitting over here laughing because I do I have a coupon holder, and I do the money dividing like that too. It's really funny. And we're just sitting there, we are so similar in these areas, and I dehydrate all kinds of stuff. Even the liver, we raise our own chickens, and in theory, my husband likes fried liver, but I never make it. So it goes in the freezer, and I take it out, and I've been cooking it up and making dog biscuits out of it.
Oh, good.
It's amazing. I also collect my grease. It's just too funny when I listen to you, all the things we do. I was going to say that we have found vacuum packers at the thrift store for a song. And our one of the big thrift stores we have here has a half off day, one day a week where everything's half off. And so I even bought a great big oval crock pot for $7 because I sometimes help donate meals to homeless and stuff like that, and I just wanted to have one free in case I need to drop it off. I wouldn't be stressed about losing it or not getting it back or getting broke or something. I also know that my mom used her pressure cooker a lot because she was really good about an hour before dinner, what are we going to have? And So she would use that. I know they're very helpful. I've been watching some videos, and I guess I couldn't really understand the love of Instapots at first because they're just a glorified pressure cooker. But I have realized that you can program them so they'll come on and be ready when you want, and you don't have to keep an eye on them as much. So, they might be a useful tool. I don't personally care to add one to my life, but I do see how they could be very useful, and they would save you a lot of money. You were talking about sea salt, too. I use sea salt. I use it for canning because it doesn't have iodine, so it doesn't turn your vegetables a weird color. So I use that sea salt a lot. I was going to mention potatoes. I don't know if you cook very much with potatoes. We go through spells, but there's a lot you can do with potatoes beyond just making like potato soup or adding it to your soups, or casseroles are a good base for that, either just plain or hashed, or like you and I were laughing when we were on the phone because we both had baked a bunch of potatoes and put the extra in the refrigerator, okay, to be used later. Mm-hmm. And you were telling me how you'd taken some leftover chili and put it over the baked potato you'd already baked and heated the whole thing up, and you had it for your lunch. And I thought it was so funny, so it sounded so good that I went ahead and made that for our dinner. And potatoes are an incredible stretcher, and I think, especially if you watch for sales, they're not too terribly expensive yet. And so I would consider that as long as you have access to sort of reasonable, regular basis, that getting potatoes would be a really good thing to have on hand for a basic. My mom used to keep them under her kitchen sink because that was a fairly cool place. So that's something to consider. We actually have a cold basement that's sort of unfinished. And so we have spaces where we can keep potatoes for a very long time. So I can get quite a few in the fall, and they store real long. You do need to check them every so often. When they rot, they stink to high heaven. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to check. You kind of have to check your potatoes off over every so often, especially if you start smelling a slight off smell, because when one potato rots, it seems to like to share its rottenness with all the others. You may have noticed that. And it is not a good smell.
Well, if you take them out of the bag, if you take them out of the bag when you get home, if you don't grow your own, and check them. Just check them real good, because if you see a little brown spot, it might just be a small one. Then you can put that one aside and use it for dinner, or cut that part off, as long as it's not all through the potato. If it starts to go, sometimes I'll toss it and compost it. You can do twice-baked potatoes also, but when I do them, like if I'm making something in the oven at 400 or 425, I'll wash up. I scrub them with a little potato brush. It's hard like a fingernail brush, and I rub oil on them. I'll take olive oil and I just dump it on my hands, and I just massage it all into the potato, into the skin, and then I take margarita salt, but you can use sea salt too, and I just rub that in, and I lay it right on the rack, and I'll do like 10 of them at a time. So then you're done. If you want to have fried potatoes for dinner or for lunch, if you just want to fry one up with some mushrooms and onions and have it as a side dish, there's just so many uses for the potatoes. But the other thing I read, now I did it one time, I wasn't real crazy about it, but if you didn't want to heat up your oven in, let's say, the summertime, a lady, she did it in a slow cooker. She just punched the potatoes, washed them and dried them and used a fork, and she put them in the slow cooker and just turned them on and checked them. Now, I might have cooked them a little too long. I only did it once. I liked the other way I did it better. But if you didn't want to use your oven, or you didn't have an oven, you could cook them in the slow cooker like that. She just put them in there. She said she didn't put anything else, like water or nothing. She just baked them slow on there. So
that's definitely an interesting idea. I've never done it. I probably just bake them in the oven like you too, though, because I'm baking other stuff, so you can just throw them in. Yeah. But that's a good thing to know in case you just don't want to mess up with heating the whole house up or anything, Yeah. That's good. Hash browns are really handy too. I was asked to make a couple breakfast casseroles. I don't normally make them for us, but I was asked, and so I used hash browns as a bottom base, but once you bake your potatoes, it makes hash browns really easy, to make. So you can use it in stuff like that, or you could even make a casserole with that, the base, or I even like to make my scalloped potatoes with the baked potatoes because they cook a lot quicker that way. And you can doctor that up with all kinds of stuff. You know, you can add any kind of meat or different seasonings and give it a kick. But all those foods are things like in the Depression area especially, they would use that for stretching their food. Like my mom grew up on lots of potatoes, she told me, because her parents didn't make a lot of money, and they where they lived, potatoes were cheap and, you know, plenty of them. So they made potatoes in multiple ways to stretch their budget. And my mom was plenty healthy enough when she grew up. You know what I mean? They all were fine. So that's something else that would be really good. Also, we've been given some of those instant mashed potatoes. I personally don't care for instant mashed potatoes reconstituted as mashed potatoes. But they are easy for stretching things. Like I said, you throw it into different recipes and it thickens up your soups and stuff. So if you like instant mashed potatoes, that would be not a bad thing to get. You would just want to know your prices. Oh, we're on another break. Okay.
Well, I have a bread machine recipe that you use potato flakes in, and it's actually really good. It's a real moist bread, and you only use a couple tablespoons, so I kept a box on hand. So we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back, everybody. I have a couple other ideas for meals. There's a recipe that I use. It's called a 3-bean chili. It's 3 different kinds of beans, probably your choice. It's real easy. It's just beans, chicken broth. You can tomatoes, seasonings, corn. There's all kinds of recipes. There's different variations, but that's something that you can have on all that stuff on hand. And make sure you have a manual can opener, because if you have an electric one and we don't have power, it's going to be pretty tough to get your cans open. So that's that one can be made probably in 15 minutes, and then you just let it simmer for a while. And when I make my soups, I like to start in the morning, and I like to let them simmer. I'm kind of like Sharon. I like the crock pot idea, the big stock pot. I have actually 3 stock pots in my kitchen because I typically cook in batches of things. So I'll make noodles in one, and I'm making the soup in the other. I might have beans in another. So when I'm in, I try to just spend the time in the kitchen and make a couple meals all at one time. Another idea that I have is if you make chicken soup. What I do is I'll either make a great big batch with 2 chickens, but if I don't do that and make buy a bigger chicken, I will add, when I'm making my stock for flavor, I take my leaves from my celery that I grow and I dehydrate them. So I throw those in the stock pot. I put an onion in there and a couple carrots with the salt and pepper, maybe a little garlic and the chicken. And then I let that cook until the chicken gets real tender. Then I save the broth and I strain all those vegetables off. And that makes my stock, my broth, a little bit tastier because I'm using more vegetables, and it makes it, to me, I've noticed it's tastier. So then I will take the chicken off the bone, I'll put the chicken back in, and then I add fresh carrots, celery, and onions, and then let that simmer. But what I do after I have that for a meal is I will save maybe a cup and a half of that broth and a cup of the chicken. And if I'm not going to make it right away, then I'll freeze both of those, and then I can have it later, and it's an easy meal. You can make chicken a la king, or you can make hot chicken sandwiches or barbecue chicken sandwiches. Anything that you only need like a cup of the chicken. So you're stretching your meals. Like Sharon said, if you were going to buy like 4 steaks or something, that's a lot more expensive than making a soup or a chowder or a stew and then stretching it over many different meals, normally several. So those were a couple ideas that I had that it just saves you time. I'm like you, Sharon. I'm in the kitchen, but boy, there's days where I'm in the kitchen all day and there's other days I just don't have time. I'm doing laundry or babysitting or something. So those were a couple things I wanted to mention about some of the meals and some of the things that I've done over the years. So, yeah, do you have any other things to add? Oh, Sharon, I have a question. Yeah. You mentioned Azure. That's like a bulk food. Was it called Azure? Is that the name of it? Standard?
Yeah, they're bulk, and they're actually expanding all over the U.S., and they have very good prices. I mean, you have to know your prices, but as a whole, like, their spices are they're good. They don't sell anything knowingly that's GMO, okay, so genetically modified. Okay. And they also, because you buy it in bulk, you can buy it so much cheaper, and then I just vacuum pack the majority of it and put those in those containers. Another thing I did one year for my niece when she got married very suddenly. She showed up and they got married. And so we were kind of one of those low ebbs and money at the moment. So I took a bunch of spices and rounded up some baby food jars that I collected, and I just put all the basic spices, each one in a different baby food jar, and wrapped it up with some salsa and some other stuff I had and gave it to her for a gift. And they loved it because they could cook and they didn't have to put all that money out to get basic spices, which was handy. The other thing I was thinking that, since we raise a lot of our own meat, I don't think I do think about some, whoops, I'll have to wait. I hear the music again. Do you hear music?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Yeah.
I'll pick up on your side another way.
Yeah. And I have a few other things to add that I thought of in the pantry, Sharon, that maybe people can pick up in bulk. Okay, sure. We'll be right back. Welcome back to USA Prepares. This is Cathy. I'm with Sharon. Sharon, I wanted to say something else, and I think it might help people to help stock their pantry. Honestly, my basement pantry was just becoming a mess. I just didn't have time to go down and organize it, so I spent a couple hours down there the other day, and I have shelves and I have like big metal cabinets, and I store I call it my extended pantry. And I saved the little cardboard boxes that the canned goods come in. So I took all the canned goods that I had and I just organized them, and I wrote on there, let's say it was black beans. I just put them all on there. And I wrote on there, but I just taped a little label on there so that if I need to change it, I can change it. And that way they stack so much easier. And I did all my jars. But I think what you can do, whether it's your food pantry upstairs, your refrigerator, your freezer, if you group everything together, you can see what you have. Now, I didn't realize I had them because it was becoming messy, and I don't really like messy, but I just didn't have time with this whole pandemic to really go through and spend the time. So I found out I had 3 cases, there's 12 in each, of tomato paste. But I didn't know I had that many. So now I'll use them up. I'll make more spaghetti sauce or marinara sauce. So if you group things together and you could kind of keep it organized, then you can have a visual to see what you need when you're running low on pasta. And one of the things I use is, I don't know exactly what they're called. They used to store magazines in them. They're about 3 inches wide, and you can set your magazines or your folders in there. You put them on your shelf or whatever. Well, I lay it down flat, and I leave the open end, like the spine is flat on the shelf. And then a box of spaghetti, or like some of them come in bags now, like cellophane bags. Well, those stack in there beautifully in your pantry so they don't flop over. So I use it for thin boxes and bags of things, and then I can keep them all together. So to me, I just feel better when everything is grouped together so I can see what I need to buy. Otherwise, like me, I run out sometimes of things that I thought I had, and then other times I've got 3 cases of tomato paste. So
that is so cool. My husband's sitting here laughing because I do a lot of the same things. I get those little short produce flat boxes, or like they put tomatoes or mushrooms or whatever in, and I set things in it. And sometimes I have taken one of those large paper clips and stuck it on the outside with a 3x5 little, like postcard, those little 3x5 cards, and mark what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And other times I've just written on the box with a marker.
Yeah.
But like you said, then you can find if you need tomato sauce, or if you have some green beans, or you have corn or canned corn or olives or whatever. Because I buy on sale, and so I put the excess down in the basement, and I keep maybe a jar or two of whatever, whatever upstairs too. I was going to kind of jump just a little bit in thinking that one of the, meat tends to be one of your more expensive purchases with food. And so I would really recommend buying meat on sale. Like right now in one of the local stores, they have the shank ham bone, a whole ham with the bone in it, still the shank kind, and it's only 99 cents a pound. And they frequently have chicken quarters on sale for 99 cents a pound. And so even if you don't have time to process it right away, if you take it and throw it in your freezer, that would be good. But you could cook down the ham, if nothing else, in your crock pot all day. And then when you come home, you can divvy it up into smaller packages and freeze it and use it for, you can do so much stuff with ham. You can put it in soups, you can make a casserole. There's just all kinds of stuff you can do with it. And same with the chicken. You can cook that down. And then, like you said, you made that whole broth. You could add it in there, and you could, if you can save a lot. But if you don't you can still freeze a lot of stuff and, be able to stretch your food. The thing I read, too, or heard recently, that I guess the majority of people throw away about a fourth of their food. And so just saying you spend $100 a week. Probably most people spend way more than that. But in 4 weeks, you've spent $400. And if you throw a fourth of it, you just threw away $100. And that $100 not only could feed you more by using up your leftovers, and, if you can't eat it today, a lot of stuff freezes. And you can put it in your freezer and pull it back out later and have a really quick, easy meal. And then you'll have an extra $100 that you could use to stock up on some of the stuff we're talking about. Your rice, your beans, your pasta, your bouillon. I have chicken broth because I can it myself. But if you broth can be a little more spendy, so you can get by using various chicken bouillons. You want to check them out. Sometimes they're a bit on the salty side, so you need to know what you buy. But that is also a good way to add flavor to your soups and stuff if you don't actually have cans or jars of chicken broth, at least to give that chicken flavor in it, I think. I also just like the Mrs. Dash blend. I throw that in a whole bunch of stuff. It just adds some more zip. I even throw it in my spaghetti sauce. I buy the big container that Costco, last time I went, didn't have Mrs. Dash, which is okay. They actually have an organic blend. It's the same thing. And I just throw that in a lot of my food, too, just to add a little more zip. And then, like I dehydrate a lot of the vegetables, and I can just throw them in. Or I have canned vegetables, too. It just kind of depends on what I'm making. But I had limited space to put all my canned goods in, so I started dehydrating a little bit more, like the carrots. If you dice them small and then you blanch them, you can dehydrate them, and they just throw back in and reconstitute, like in probably 5 minutes. By the time you cook whatever you're cooking, you've added that, or the celery, or, so I've been doing that. The other thing I'd mentioned before on another show is that I dehydrate a lot of spinach. I shred it and put it on my dehydrator, and then I kind of powder it, and I add that to, like, any kind of spicy sauce, like lasagna or spaghetti or whatever, and it just slides in there, and you don't even taste it, but then you've added more nutrition to your food. And if you were cooking from home storage and couldn't get to the store to get fresh salad makings or something, that is a really good way to add nutrition into your food and still get the benefits of the vegetables and stuff like that.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to mention not to waste. I can remember as a child, my grandmother and I think my dad used to say, open up the refrigerator every few days and see what's in there and use it up, because you forget. Things get pushed in the back. So you look at your celery, or what do you have in there? Like the other day, I had some rice in there, and it was the organic long grain rice. It was, and I'd kind of forgotten I had it. So I thought I'd better use this up. So I just did a stir fry. I had some frozen broccoli. I had some sesame oil, onions, garlic, mushrooms, some frozen peas, and I had just a stir fry for dinner for me. And it was hardly any expense, hardly any time. But if not, we were always throwing away the noodles or the soup or the rice because it goes bad. If you just have to kind of keep an eye on it. So I agree. Just try not to waste it. And if it looks like you can't use it, like Sharon said, just throw it in the freezer. And, a lot of times for me, I cook for my dogs. So if I have, let's say I had too much rice left over, then I would add a little bit of that to her food. Just, okay, I'm not going to throw away. I'll give it to her. And the other thing in your pantry is make sure that, I'm sure most everybody listening probably has cats or dogs. So I would say in times like we have right now, I would say buy maybe 3 or 4 big bags of dog food and just have it on hand. I've noticed that dog food has gone, I don't buy that much of it because I cook for her, but it's gone up. I've seen dog food $60 to $80 a bag, and I got an 80-pound dog, so that goes quick. So I think that if you can just look ahead, like what would you need to survive, even if you can only do it for 2 weeks, like do I have enough that if things get bad, just start out with 1 or 2 weeks and then gradually add to that. I've been doing this. I want to say I've been doing this probably since the early 90s. Just the reality of raising children and really not having a lot of money, you just kind of learn like, okay, I'm the cook here. I have to make sure I provide for my children. So you just do, I guess you're forced to do what you have to do sometimes. So, but I was going to mention not to waste things, really try to use them up.
I read Tightwad Gazette series of books. I think they've combined them now into one, but they're 3. They're made way back, but she had a lot of ideas, and what they did at that point, because they stocked up a little bit, they bought on sale ahead, but they would make meals from the sales flyers. They would buy whatever meat, and then they would put their meals around that. And that is a way to start out to save money. Work whatever's on sale for the meat, then you make dishes out of that. Like to me, I look for the sales, and I'm set up good because we got a half a hog, but otherwise I'd probably buy a couple of these hams and throw them in there to cook and do later with, We raise our own meat chickens. Otherwise, I'd be buying a bunch of those chicken quarters, freeze them, and then cooking them down maybe all at once. I have a big pressure cooker, which you can use, a pressure canner that you can use to cooker. So sometimes I cook actually our own chicken meat, the backs and necks and stuff down when we butcher them. And I make broth and shredded chicken meat, which I can make like quick quesadillas. You just get some tortilla shells, you heat them up a little bit, you warm up the meat a little bit, you throw it in there, put some salsa on, maybe a little cheese, and grill it back and forth, make those little kind of, what are they, quesadillas or whatever, flip them back and forth and throw them on there. And like sour cream, pop some sour cream on it, you know what I mean? And it's a really fast, quick meal, but you're getting, your tomatoes and some of the vegetables. I make my own salsa, so it has a lot of good stuff in it. And, those are kind of quick meals rather than running by McDonald's and buying the chemically laden hamburgers and fries and everything. You can come home and make really quick stuff that doesn't take a lot of time. I used to have a whole bunch of those things when the kids were young, and I still do. I still fall back on that sometimes because we do a lot of, we're involved in a lot of activities, and then sometimes I'm watching my granddaughters, and it is strange, but I have gotten older too. When you watch your grandkids, you're pretty tired when they left, and it kind of cracks me up because at one time I took care of 5 kids and could still keep rolling in the evening. It's like after I have them, and I have really good little granddaughters. I mean, they're very well behaved, but it's just a different dynamic that I'm pretty tired. It's like, okay, what can I put together quickly? And then I fall back on all these quick meals that I have because I have all the basic stuff on hand that I can throw it together quickly. And you really don't want to go out and have to pay full price on all this stuff because I know a young lady, she's trying to get stocked up because she feels prices are going up, but she's just not buying very frugally, shall we say, or efficiently. I mean, she just goes and buys the pasta on the shelf at $2.19, like you said, when you get it for $1. Okay, so she could be getting 2 bags if she just watch for the sale or shop at a different place. And so, it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit of work, but really, once you get on the routine and you learn the pattern, it doesn't take any more work. Well,
there's a learning curve too.
Yeah, it's a learning curve.
you need to just kind of stick with it. You're going to make mistakes, so just keep trying.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm just talking about not wasting. When you open a brick of cream cheese, what I do is I cut it in half, and then I use a food saver bag, and I put it in the food saver bag, and then I've got one that is, you can adjust it so it doesn't squish it too much, you can adjust how much vacuum you want, and then it doesn't get moldy on, because I don't use it that much. So if you're just using it occasionally for a dish or a bagel or something, so then I leave it in the food saver bag, and it stays good until I open it, because it literally sucks all the air out. And I do the same thing like with a brick of cheese. If I'm not going to use all the cheese right away, I'll just cut a portion off, and then I'll put the rest in the food saver bag, and it stays. And you're not throwing it away. And there again, that way you've got kind of stuff in your refrigerator that's a backup in case you don't have it. And you look, oh yeah, I still got some cheese here or some sour cream. Sometimes I do the same thing with sour cream. I use one of the little canisters that you get from Food Saver, and I'll put the sour cream in there, because a lot of times I just don't use the whole thing at one time. And it stays for a pretty long time, not as much as the others, but it does stay for quite a while.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Yeah. I actually bought a bunch of cheese on sale and went ahead and re-vacuum packed it in those food saver bags, put it down in the basement. Our basement is unheated. And so, oh dear, my husband, somebody came up. We got a dog. Sorry about that. My husband and I were talking about something while we were on break. And, it looks like they're going to go ahead and give us another stimulus thing. Money, and if so, I would really recommend that people take a good portion of that and start stocking up on, just your basics and maybe, I don't know, tomatoes and beans and rice and the barley and all that. But don't stock up on stuff you don't like. Like, I know a lady who hates rice. Well, if you don't like rice, don't stock up on rice, But you could really get ahead and look around at some of the good places to buy sales. The Dollar Tree is actually not bad for things like pasta if you don't see it on sale. But like you said, sales run in cycles, and frequently they run cycles with the pasta, and then you can buy it a whole lot cheaper that way, and you can save money. But it might be a good thing to consider that if you do get this money, you weren't living on it before, and if you take part of it, you could get really kind of on top of saving money. And another thing that I know you and I both know, but people don't frequently realize how much food they eat. So I once had, there's a really good deal on green beans. I called my friend, she had 5 kids too, and I said, hey, I'm in the store. There's this good deal on green beans. Do you want me to get you some? She goes, oh yeah, why don't you get me about 4 cans? I said, so how many cans do you eat a week? And she goes, oh, we have at least twice a week and 2 cans each. I said, so you're only saving money for a week. Would you like me to get more? Hint, hint.
Yeah.
And so, so like I do like candy and I have a lot of jars, but if I put up green beans and we eat it once a week and we would eat a pint, say, I need 52 jars, per year.
Yeah.
And so I don't think people think how much they actually use. And then if you end up being more homebound, like this COVID thing they hit, and they keep predicting maybe that'll happen again, you will eat a lot more food than you think you do. And so when we have things like the beans and the rice and the pasta and, sauce for it and all that kind of stuff, and plenty of flour and needed baking powder and baking soda so it'll rise, and ideally yeast for making breads, that will stretch your food and you won't feel so deprived and just eating almost nothing or stressing out because you don't have food. So, if people can kind of take advantage of this sale or this money that looks like it's coming, so far they've been giving it to us, then you might already have planned, like, here's some extra money and I'm going to take a portion of it and I'm going to get set up so that I can have, like, that feeling, really good feeling, like, I don't have to worry about what to make. I can make all kinds of things because I have a well-stocked pantry. And that is a very good feeling, like you were talking about.
It really is. And talking about pasta, Sharon, Vince and I have talked, and I think Vince has mentioned it online, that Sam's Club has a great price on pasta. and it's very good. And so if you can go there, you can get it, or you can also order it online. If you've got the Plus membership, you don't pay for shipping. But Sharon, I wanted to tell you that you're delightful. I appreciate all your talent and your ability, and I feel like I'm talking to myself because we do so many of the same things.
Oh, my husband's sitting here cracking up. He goes, you do that, you do that. You know, I'm going, yeah, we do. We just do so many of the same things, but it pays off. It really pays off to do this stuff. And once you learn it, it's not as hard. There is a learning curve, and every time you do something the first time, it's a lot harder than if you did it the fifth time, you know. So, hey, thanks a lot for let me join you. You have a great day.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. You also.